What is up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. Tuesday night, 7 o'clock here. Waiver Wire show. We're going to get into it. Whatever waiver wire questions you guys need, please fire them away in the comments. And then any other questions too. This is kind of just like an open hangout. It is Tuesday night, so I'm probably not going to have the best start-sit questions, but it's a weird week with all the buys this week. There's going to be a lot of things to sift through. We got kind of a fun Thursday night game. Dallas and Seattle NFC playoff seedings on the line here. So we'll watch for that. Good evening, everybody, though. Good evening to Ryan. Hope you're doing well. He's coming in hot with the Pitts or Frymouth this week and rest of season. It's hard to ignore what Pat Frymouth just did on Sunday here. Kyle Pitts hasn't done that this year, maybe in his career. Like, we haven't seen a game like that from him. And Pat Frymouth, man, coming in hot with the new offensive coordinator being kind of the focal point of the offense here. 11 targets, 9 for 120. Didn't even score a touchdown, and he hit 20 points. So that's pretty amazing. I think at this point, I'm locking myself in with Pat Frymouth for the rest of the season. And Kyle Pitts has a tough matchup this weekend against the Jets. I do think they allow tight end points, but it's not like substantial enough for me to lean one way into it. Kyle Pitts this year, no 20-point games. He's been under 10 points for 5 straight games here. So I'm leaning hot hand Pat Frymouth. Good evening to Harris. Hope you're doing well. Chase, good evening as well. Tua or Stroud? I'm starting both Hill and Dell too. I think you got to go with Tua. You're not going to get a better matchup the rest of the season. If you think back to Thanksgiving, the middle game there, Dallas versus the Commanders, we saw what Dak did to this secondary. We've seen huge games allowed by the Washington Commanders defense. And in terms of fantasy points allowed at the quarterback position, no team allows more points than the Washington Commanders. So I'm going Tua here. I see that, Stroud's a really good play. But Denver's defense, man, they've been playing pretty well. They're on the 5-game win streak. They do have good cornerback play. I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa. You have the Hill. I'm going Tua. Good evening to Jersey. Hope you're doing well. Chase is saying, Dolphins defense or Saints defense rest of season? Need a tight end since likely is on a bye. Would prefer to drop a defense and not a skilled position. Okay. We're kind of in the middle of a good run for the Dolphins defense. I'm aware of that. Let's just double check that. So the Dolphins are getting Washington, Tennessee, the Jets. I'm not playing the Dolphins defense, though, against Dallas and Baltimore. So the next 3 weeks, I do like Miami's defense. Looking at the Saints defense real quick, and the Saints are kind of teetering right now. Not really confident in them. They get Detroit. I don't like that matchup this weekend. It's in New Orleans, so that could be okay, but usually we don't want to mess with the Lions defense. Then you get Carolina. Then you get the Giants, the Rams, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 potential starts here compared to the Dolphins. If I had to let a team go, I'm playing the Dolphins this week against the Commanders. So if you want to try and let the Saints go, maybe you can get them back. But, man, I think people are probably going to be looking at Carolina and the Giants. Like, these are 2 really juicy matchups. So for this week, I think it's the Dolphins that I would play. But I might prefer the Saints long term, and that might change my thinking a little bit here. If you need a tight end, I'm probably dropping the Dolphins defense. And, hey, the thing with this weekend's game going up against Washington, let me pull it up here. Let's go to the game lines here. And if you guys haven't used my DraftKings game lines tool, it's a really good indicator on what defenses we should be looking at. So if you hit the team total tab, this is the team that's projected to score the least points. That's the Bengals. So I like the Jags defense as a streamer this weekend. But the teams in question here, the Dolphins going up against Washington. I mean, Washington's projected to score 20 points. So I don't know if I love that. You could get turnovers and things like that from the Dolphins defense. But again, the Commanders are projected to score a good amount of points. And then, of course, the Lions, man, they're one of the top scoring offenses. They're supposed to score 24 in this one. So I'm going to lean with the Dolphins defense for this week and probably for the next couple of weeks, I suppose. Ryan says, who should I drop for Moss? Charbonnet, Chandler, or Javonte? Probably Chandler. Javante's still a lead back in that offense. I do want to say, I think Samaje Perine is a really good pickup too. If you can get Zach Moss, please by all means go and get Zach Moss. But I did want to mention that Javonte Williams losing a little bit of steam here with the recent success of Samaje Perine. Let me see if I can find that Broncos game for us. In terms of snaps, Javonte is still dominating the snaps, but when Perine's out there, he's getting touches. So we're not cutting Javonte. We're not cutting Charbonnet as long as, Kenneth Walker's hurt. So I'm cutting Ty Chandler here in this case here, Ryan. And hey, good evening to Charlene. Hope you're doing well. Harris says, Pat or Isaiah Likely non-PPR. I'm assuming this is for the rest of season, Harris, since Likely's on bye. For this week, it's obviously Pat Freiermuth. And I think for the rest of the season right now, I trust Pat Freiermuth right now. He's a better talent at the tight end position. And Likely is still hard to trust. I like the talent of Isaiah Likely, but he really hasn't shown us much, especially this year. He really hasn't shown us much in the few spots where he's gotten the chance to be the guy. So Pat Freiermuth for me. You think Warren bounces back this weekend? I do. In terms of fantasy points allowed, man, this is as good as it gets for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, the rest of the way. The Cardinals rank 31st against opponent running backs, allowing almost 29 points per game. So if we slice the pie in half, that's kind of what they're doing with Najee and Warren right now. They're splitting it down the middle, 50-50. There's a range of 13 to 14 points for each running back in this one. So I think Jaylen Warren does bounce back. He had the fumble last weekend. It could have been more, too. It could have been more. We did see Najee Harris punching the touchdown. So I still like Jaylen Warren. He's a must-start running back, too, I believe. Oh, dang. I don't think you can drop Keaton Mitchell right now, Harris. The numbers looked really, really good for Keaton Mitchell on, was it? Yeah, that was Sunday Night Football. Let me pull that back up. To me, it looks like Keaton Mitchell is taking over as the starting running back for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's pull these numbers up here. 33 snaps for Mitchell, 20 for Justice Hill, 19 for Gus Edwards. It's still a three-way committee, not exactly exciting, but we're seeing Keaton Mitchell's routes go up, which is fantastic. Only 2 targets, but I believe he caught both passes. He did lead the team in carries. You're getting 10 touches here from a running back in a non-PPR format. Touchdowns will come for Keaton Mitchell. I still like Brandon Cooks. He's been heating up, but man, I think I probably lean towards keeping the running back in a non-PPR league. Unless the only way I would let Mitchell go, Harris, is if like Mitchell's your RB5 or something like that. But I want Mitchell on my team for the playoffs here. He's a player that, again, it's a bye week right now. We could see him take another step forward and start to get maybe 15 touches per game. So I think Mitchell's the guy I'm keeping in that question. Jersey says, had some bad luck this year, played top score 4 times this year, next 2 weeks, must win. Play Hill or Watson at flex. Is that Taysom Hill? I'm assuming it's not Tyreek Hill here, Jersey, because that would be easy Tyreek. But if it's Taysom Hill or Watson, I think I'm leaning towards Watson. He finally is starting to make some plays. I was encouraged by what he did against the Lions. It was a decent matchup against the Lions, but right now, let's look at the Watson numbers. His last 2 games, 10 and 20. We know what his floor is, 4 to 6 points. So not the greatest, but I like the 7 targets. Those are starting to trickle up, and he finally had a good game here, 5 for 94 and a touchdown. It should be Watson here. And with Taysom Hill, I like Taysom Hill. And actually, I might change my mind here because Taysom Hill's got 8 points, 4.3 points, and he's been a few weeks removed from his 20-point bangers. He hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 games. And we're also potentially looking at Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed not playing in this one. So they could be down some weapons, which could mean more Taysom Hill in terms of receiving, rushing, and maybe even throwing the ball. So I think Taysom Hill, if no Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, I might change my answer to Taysom Hill in a matchup here against the Detroit Lions. Let me look and show you. And we know Taysom Hill's not like a real tight end, but in terms of fantasy points allowed to the tight end position, where am I? Fantasy points allowed. I'm all turned around here. Here we go. Let's look at those tight end points allowed by the Lions. I believe they allow quite a bit of fantasy points. And they rank 22nd, so about 12.36 points per game to the tight end position. I think I'm going to go with Taysom Hill here, man. Dolphins have a great run game while Texans have to pass the ball. I'm not sure what that's referring to, Chase. Drop Higgins or Deontay for a Green Bay receiver. Um, you could probably. I'm going to hold on to Deontay Johnson. I know he's been frustrating, but his days are coming. Whereas T. Higgins, with Jake Browning, I'm not super excited about the Bengals passing offense. I think there's really only room for Jamar Chase to still be relevant. So I'm probably dropping T. Higgins if you can get Jaden Reed, Christian Watson. I think I'm dropping Higgins for one of those receivers. And then another T. Higgins question. Are we playing T. Higgins this week? I think with his first game back from a hamstring injury, I'm less excited to do so. The matchup this weekend it's pretty good. Going up against Jacksonville. They rank 22nd here, 36 points per game allowed to the receiver position. But again, we don't know if we trust Jake Browning. So you're potentially, whipping out a guy that's got a floor of 4 to 6 points, maybe only 2 or 3 catches. I think I'm leaning towards not playing Higgins. I want to see what it looks like first. Even though I like the matchup on Monday Night Football. And again, with the hamstring thing too, we might not have a clear answer on Higgins going into Monday Night Football. So you might have to just play the guys that play on Sunday. So I think for now, I'm going to lean towards no T. Higgins in my lineups this week. Yes, Justin Jefferson is back. And yeah, we're stashing Dearness Johnson for sure, Charlene. You can also drop Hunt. Yeah, let's drop Kareem Hunt there, Harris. Jerome Ford's still the guy. Kareem Hunt doesn't offer much. He's pretty much a boom bust touchdown player. So I'll drop Kareem Hunt in this situation. Purdy or Sam Howell this weekend? You got to go with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is the guy you're looking for. In terms of quarterback points allowed, the Eagles do rank 31st. They've allowed 23 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. They're giving up 21.67 points per game to the quarterback position. So I'm all in on Brock Purdy this weekend. I do like Sam Howell quite a bit going up against the Dolphins. They rank, average here about 16 points per game. But man, it's a difference of 5 points per game. You're attaching yourself to some really good weapons. I'm leaning into that 49ers Eagles matchup here with Brock Purdy, Ryan. Chase says my RBs in Superflex Dynasty half PPR for running backs: Hall, Mixon, Warren, Roschon, and Mitchell. Mixon is going to hurt as a contender due to Burrow struggling week to week on who to start. Nobody is safe. I think for this week you're kind of stuck with starting Hall and Warren. Roschon's on bye, Mitchell's on bye. Probably leaving Mixon out of it if it's me. But next week it looks better though, because I think we're going to have the full array of weapons here for you. Someone drop Jordan Addison. Should I pick them up or pick up Chris Godwin or keep Deontay Johnson non-PPR? I think with Justin Jefferson returning, that's going to take a lot of the ceiling off of Jordan Addison. So I'm not as excited to pick him up. I'm probably going to just keep Deontay Johnson. All these guys are very, very similar. Deontay Johnson and Godwin are kind of the same guy here, but I just think Deontay has the potential to still lead the team in targets. He is still the number 1 wide receiver on that team, whereas Addison's the 2, Godwin's the 2. I think I'm leaning towards keeping Deontay Johnson here, Harris. Still like Chuba Hubbard. I have to put him in my flex spot. It's an interesting spot for Chuba Hubbard this weekend. It's a tough game for them. The Buccaneers rank 7th best against the running back position here, allowing about 17.84 points. Let me look at I want to look at the split here between the 2 Panthers backs. It was a tough matchup. Like Chuba played really well against a tough Titans defense here. He still dominated the snaps, 47 snaps, 26 routes to Sanders' 7, 5 targets to 1. Carries were split though. So it's still going to be a split in the carries department, but it's clear to me that Chuba is the passing down back. You can see here, he dominated the 3rd downs. He dominated the 2-minute drill, goal line. They did give Sanders the short yardage work here, but Chuba is still an interesting flex RB2 kind of candidate here. Referring to Tua versus Stroud at QB. I'm going with the team that's given up a lot of points to the quarterback. We just saw Dak Prescott. Like the Cowboys had a game plan on Thursday to throw it deep because that's how easy it is to beat the Commanders' defense. And with a guy like Tyreek Hill, I can easily see Tyreek Hill having one of those 200-yard games, 2 touchdowns, something like that. I want to play Personally, I'm going to play Tua. I know Stroud's been balling out, but that Broncos defense has been playing pretty good. And the nature of that game too, Miami versus Washington, the Dolphins defense is not that great. Like they looked really good against the Jets, but that's easy to do, I think. With the way Sam Howell's throwing the ball, that game could be high scoring, which means more Tua. I'm still going to lean with Tua here. Should we trade for Zach Moss? So it sounds like it's a 2 to 3 week deal for Jonathan Taylor. It's week 13. So week 13 and 14, Jonathan Taylor's not playing the next 2 games. There's potential for him to be back in the first round of the playoffs, weeks 15. If you're a team that needs a playoff push to get in, I would say, yeah, you can go ahead and trade for Zach Moss. If you're a team that already has, the playoff looking good and you don't need the extra push to get into the playoffs, I would maybe trade for Jonathan Taylor on the other side here. So I think there's a little bit of a perspective here. If you're, if you're sitting at 7-5, 6-6, and you really need, to make sure you win, I'm open to trading for Zach Moss this week. What are we doing with Adam Thielen? I'd like to give him one more chance this week. I think I ranked him as a wide receiver 3 flex in my rankings this week. But he's playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is one of the worst teams, especially against the slot. That's where Thielen kind of lives. It's a really good matchup here. You also have a whole new coaching staff for the Carolina Panthers. Maybe they kind of dumb things down and make things easy for Bryce Young and make sure he hits his Thielens and his Mingos and runs the ball well. So I think you're holding on to Thielen. This is kind of what, Harris, we've talked about Thielen a lot of times this summer, and this was kind of what I worried about, just the second half of the year for Thielen kind of, falling away. And if he can't get it done against Tampa Bay, I think I'm shutting Thielen down. But I think I'm going to give him one more chance this week in a really good matchup against Tampa Bay. Should I pick up Zach Moss and play him over Warren? Let's look at the matchup here for Zach Moss. So he's playing Tennessee. It's not the best matchup, but I do believe the Colts Titans played each other once already, and I thought Zach Moss played really well. It was 23-16 in this game back in it looks like October. We look at the box score here. Zach Moss 23 for 165 and 2 touchdowns. It's a pretty good matchup. He caught 2 for 30 in that game. The matchup's not great. The production was great in this game here. So I'm open to playing Zach Moss here over Jaylen Warren. If it does feel a little bit risky, I think Jaylen Warren's a safe, 10 to 14 points. But I think we're probably going to see Zach Moss ranked over Warren. So I'm cool with Zach Moss over Jaylen Warren here. How do you feel about Chiefs defense? Could pick up Atlanta, Rams, Bucks, Jets, and Jags. Let's go back to here. I'm interested in Jacksonville quite a bit. I think Atlanta is another easy one for me. I don't love the Chiefs defense. The Packers are only projected to score 18 points, but it's in Green Bay. So I'm a little bit nervous about that one. Again, the Packers have been riding a pretty nice momentum wave right here. So I think for me, it's really simple. I'm looking at Tampa Bay at home against Carolina, Atlanta, and Jacksonville. I'm probably just going to stick with the Atlanta Falcons here, even though they're on the road against the Jets. The Jets offense they can't light the scoreboard up. And the one thing that the Jets want to do is run the ball, and Atlanta's one of the better run-stopping defenses. I believe they rank second best against running back points allowed. So I'm leaning Atlanta. I would rank them Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville as my options. Start 2 full PPR. Dell, Nico, Kirk, Deontay. Currently have both Dell and Nico. I think you're going Dell for sure. The area that concerns me is Nico Collins is probably going to be matched up against not Derek Stingley, Pat Surtain Jr. And the Texans here, Broncos here. It's a tough matchup for outside receivers, I think, against the Denver Broncos here. So I'm leaning towards Dell for sure. And then I think it's between Kirk and Deontay. The Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals are middle of the road here against the opponent wide receivers, whereas Christian Kirk and the Cincinnati Bengals, same thing, kind of average here. I'm probably gonna just stick with the hot hand, and I think that's Christian Kirk. So I'm gonna go Dell and Kirk here over Nico. Nico just feels like, he could flip 3 for 20, or he has a wider range of outcomes where I think Kirk has been good enough lately. And I know Zay Jones is back, which gives me a little bit of pause, but it's a good offense to be invested in. Trevor Lawrence is probably playing the best football of his season right now, and Kirk remains a high target player, 7, 6, 11, 5, 6, 6. It's all there. Safe floor of 7 to 8 points, good range of a ceiling outcome here. Drop Deontay for Downs, Curtis Rice, or DeMario. I think you got to go get Rashee Rice. If I'm going to rank them, I'm going to rank them as Rice, Samuel, Downs, and DeMario Douglas. I'm okay with dropping Deontay Johnson. One, he just doesn't catch touchdowns, which I know is frustrating. Is Deontay on the list yet for top 50? He's close. Here we go. All right, so in just a handful of games here, he's seeing the targets that I want to see. He did have 2 really bad games in a row. I would like to see him build off of this game here, but there's just 3 straight weeks of no confidence in this. I think you probably got to play Rashee Rice in this one. Otherwise, I do like Curtis Samuel second, so I would try for both those guys. Do you think Aaron Jones will play? I don't have any practice reports yet on this. Let me double check to see. I don't think they uploaded anything. I think they only do the Tuesday. I think Tuesday is only the Thursday night teams that play. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe they put out some reports because they did play last Thursday night. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I'm going to assume he's not playing in this one, Harris. It just doesn't make sense, I think, to play. I know that ESPN and some other sites have some projections on him, but I'm leaning towards him being doubtful this weekend. Green Bay has a really nice schedule coming up. I would hate for them to rush him back and have him, get hurt again. Also, playoffs are now in the conversation for the Green Bay Packers this year, which is pretty wild to say after the really rough October month that they had. But here we are. I think preserving Aaron Jones for week 14 makes more sense here. So I'm going to say no Aaron Jones this week. Gibbs still RB1 in Detroit. It's interesting, man. I don't think Monty or Gibbs, there is no 1 or 2. It's kind of a 1A, 1B. In this game here, because the Lions were losing, you saw Gibbs dominate the routes and the snaps. Montgomery still was their primary ball carrier. I think I've always said this, that I think there's room for 30 touches for these Detroit running backs, whether that's 15 to 20 for Monty and about, 10 to 12 for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's been getting the carries, which is nice, and the targets have been there. I still think it's kind of a 1A, 1B. In a PPR league, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the 1A. And Monty the 1B. In half PPR and non-PPR, I'm going to flip them and say Monty is the 1A and Gibbs the 1B. Pat Daddy or Trey McBride rest of season. Trey McBride's been pretty good. Let's actually look those numbers up. He's been really steady. He only has the 1 touchdown on the year, but 7, 9, 9. I will say I feel more comfortable starting Trey McBride right now just because he's been healthy and dependable all season. And it's also he is kind of the premier target for Kyler Murray right now. Whereas with Pat Freiermuth, I still don't know if that was just a one-off game. There's not enough data points on Pat Freiermuth this year. He's also had the hamstring injury that he's dealt with that could easily get re-aggravated. So I'm leaning towards Trey McBride being the guy that I want rest of season, but it's very close, Harris. I think we've seen more from Trey McBride than we have from Pat this year, and I trust Trey a little bit more. Oh yeah, we're starting Justin Jefferson back. We're not missing a Justin Jefferson game. They've been extra cautious with him. They've given him as much time as he's needed. He gets another week to heal over the bye week. We're playing Justin Jefferson for sure. I have to start hunting now. Who do I drop? Brandon Cooks or Keaton Mitchell? I also can drop London. Man, oh man. Let me just double check Brandon Cooks' numbers because he's starting to come around, and that Dallas offense is just so good. The issue is he's only had one game of double-digit targets. Otherwise, he's 4 to 5 targets per game. The touchdowns have been flowing though. So in a non-PPR touchdown league, I do think Brandon Cooks is probably a guy that I like to keep here. But man, I think there's a good chance you can maybe get Brandon Cooks back. I think if you let Keaton Mitchell go, someone's picking Keaton Mitchell up right away. Whereas Brandon Cooks, someone's probably going to hesitate on that. I'm keeping Keaton Mitchell here. Drake London. The Falcons just have such a nice schedule the rest of the season here. London doesn't catch touchdowns though, so I get it, but he's very consistent. Whereas I think I'd rather start Drake London on a weekly basis over Brandon Cooks just because I know the floor is going to be there for 50, 60 yards. So it's close. I think I'm going to let Brandon Cooks go though. Zach Ertz is. I'm not worried about it. If Zach Ertz returns, it's Trey McBride is the starting tight end. I feel pretty confident about that. Cardinals have a bye next weekend. Maybe Zach Ertz is back for week 15, but I don't see you can't put Trey McBride back in the back. I think he's the starting tight end. It is concerning, but we can't sit Justin Jefferson, man. It's the same reason why we can't sit Jamar Chase right now. He is the premier receiving option on a team, even though people have short memories. Josh Dobbs has had 2 bad games in a row, but before that, all season long, actually, he's been feeding his playmakers the ball. So I think Justin Jefferson backs and give this offense a lift. It's going to help Dobbs look better too. So I'm not concerned with the JJ situation. I'm probably trying to sell Keaton Mitchell right now, honestly. If I can get a second-round pick for Keaton Mitchell, I'm probably going to do that, Chase. He's not a big guy. What is he? He's 5'8", and what's the weight on this young man? 5'8", 190. This is not a good size that's meant to hold up. I think he's probably a role player. That's always going to be like a 1A, 1B. He's probably going to always be like a 1B situation here. The Ravens do get J.K. Dobbins back next year, but I don't think he's going to be much of anything. We might even see the Ravens draft a running back in the draft next year to just fully replace Dobbins and then some of the other guys here. So I don't love it for Keaton Mitchell. I think I'm willing to field offers. And if I can get a second-round pick for Keaton Mitchell, a guy that you either picked up or drafted real late in your drafts, I'm probably doing it. I like the talent. He could be a guy that we lean into for this fantasy playoff run here, but I think short term, he's a guy that I'm curious about. I still don't feel good starting him, but man, like he kind of took over the 1A situation for the Ravens against the Chargers here. So I think short term, I want to potentially RB2 flex him. Long term, I want to get rid of him. Would you drop Jordan Addison? It depends on. I probably need more details, Harris. I probably wouldn't drop him just because of depth purposes. If anything happens to Justin Jefferson again, we're kind of back into playing Addison confidently. So I don't think I would drop him just yet. I kind of want to hold him through the bye week and see what he does week 14. If that's too long for you, if you need somebody now, and especially like if you're setting your week 14 lineup and you're not going to start Addison, then I would just say go for it. Go ahead and let him go. Nathan, thanks for hanging out. What do you think about Eckler? Trade him? If so, for who? Alrighty. So I think right now Eckler, this is more of a take on the Chargers offense as a whole. They got nobody else. It's Keenan Allen. It's Austin Eckler. These guys are getting the ball a ton right now. I think Eckler's a guy that I still want on my team. If it's a redraft league, I'm not trading him. If it's a dynasty league, I'll probably move him. But I do think he's a guy that can help us win fantasy championships right now. 7 and 9 points in the last 2 games, but Baltimore's a really good defense. I don't know what happened in the Packer game. He was running the ball well. He just didn't get targets. But it's been a few games since he scored. He's going to finish up with the Patriots, the Broncos, the Raiders, the Bills, and the Broncos again. I mean, in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position, these are really good matchups for Eckler. I believe Denver still ranks last. The Raiders are not a good defense. The Bills are not what they once were. I want to hold on to Eckler. I think if you were looking to trade Austin Eckler, I mean, I think a guy like Isaiah Pacheco really showed what he can do with his big game on Sunday. I think Tony Pollard, Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy like Austin Eckler is going to pretty much yield you anybody you want. And I think maybe even a Bijan Robinson right now, he's running pretty hot. You can pretty much get anybody you want besides Christian McCaffrey, I would say. So if you're looking for something, one, I would say, hey, are you interested in Austin Eckler? If they are, you can pretty much pull whatever you want. And if you wanted to grab 2 running backs for Austin Eckler, you could easily do that and say you can get, you can get a Zach Moss for now, and you could pair it with another running back like Jalen Warren, David Montgomery. You can do something like that. But I think I'm going to hold on to Eckler. I wouldn't, even in a super flex league. We know what the Patriots quarterbacks are, and they're just not good. Zappy is projected 14 points here on ESPN. I have no confidence in starting this guy. I don't want to babysit him. I'm going to let somebody else burn a roster spot. Pick up Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Browning. I actually thought Browning looked okay. It was a tough matchup against the Steelers. He threw the ball at a nice clip, 73%, 227 yards, a touchdown, interception. He runs the ball a little bit too. I think there's more stability with Jake Browning. I like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but he's kind of proving to be a little wild. I like his skill set though for fantasy points, but I think Browning offers you a safe floor each week. Honestly, Browning played, I thought, just as well as Kenny Pickett did in the same game here. I watched that game on Sunday, and I thought Browning held his own. He only made the one mistake with the interception, throwing on the out route to Jamar Chase. So I think Browning's the guy that I'm more comfortable with. If I needed to start a quarterback too, it's probably Browning. Hubbard or Kareem Hunt non-PPR? It's Hubbard. I'm kind of getting done with Kareem Hunt here, Harris. I'm not super excited about it. If I pull up the numbers here from last week, let's take a peek. All right, the snaps. Jerome Ford's back to dominating. 51 snaps to 19 Kareem Hunt snaps. 36 routes for Ford, 9 for Hunt, 7 targets for Jerome Ford. We're not even getting a single target from Hunt anymore. The carries are kind of split, but I don't feel comfortable starting Kareem Hunt. I don't feel comfortable about him getting goal line work. If we look at the split, I don't know if they have a chart for me, but I think we can let Kareem Hunt go. I want Chuba Hubbard. No, we can't drop Tajay Spears just yet. He's still getting a lot of work, man. A lot of snaps, a lot of routes, a lot of targets. One Derrick Henry injury, and you're going to be wishing that we held on to Tajay Spears, and he still looks good when he has the ball. So I kind of want to hold on to him. If you need to make a move to make your team better, and you think, especially if you can get a Zach Moss type or something else, I'm okay with moving on from Tajay Spears and moving into a better situation. It's honestly this close to me between Spears and Dearness Johnson, who I think's been looking pretty good. So if you have to let him go, I'm fine with it. He really doesn't have value unless something happens to Derrick Henry. So we're kind of stuck in a holding handcuff situation here. Yeah, the Vikings did need a bye this week. It's been a rough last 2 games for Josh Dobbs, but hey, man, he's still new to the team. He needs more time. They're getting Justin Jefferson back. I think they're getting a good reset opportunity here. And the teams with the late buys this year, I think they probably feel pretty good about having the late buy. I'm going with Samaje Perine here for the rest of the season. And let me pull up Mr. Perine's numbers for you. So the last 2 games, he's been 13 points and 13 points. He finally got a goal line touchdown last week, 7 for 55 and a touchdown, 7 for 60 as a receiver. I mean, if you needed to whip out a running back too, Chase, like 13, 7, 4, 7, I don't hate it. And I think his numbers are going to continue to be in the 8 to 10 touches per game here. Spears, continues to be the backup to Derrick Henry, continues to be the third down back. Whereas right now, Perine he's a part of the offense. Spears is still kind of like just an afterthought right now. I think I'm going to go with Samaje. I don't think they can put Dalton Kincaid away. What we've seen from him is pretty damn good. Um, I don't see Dawson Knox coming in and just taking a bunch of work from Dalton Kincaid. So I still think he's a must start. Ty Chandler, let's look at the numbers from last night's game. Where are we? So Madison, 10 carries, Chandler, 4 carries, 2 targets each. Madison running more routes, Madison more snaps. Here is your backfield split from the game. It's not great by any means for Madison either, but I do think Ty Chandler can probably be dropped. He's just a handcuff at this point. So I still like holding on to handcuffs when I can, but if you find yourself finding a better situation somewhere, I'm cool with moving on from Ty Chandler. Do you think Dallas Goedert will play this week? That's a great question there, Harris. It sounds probable, which is kind of crazy. I thought he was always going to be back week 14, but hey, let me read you the note that I found here on ESPN site. Goddard is targeting a return to the field Sunday versus the 49ers. This is all going to be about practice participation. If he comes out tomorrow, Wednesday, and he gets a limited practice, I'm going to say it's on. Goddard is back. And I think because it's a wrist injury, I don't think that's going to limit him in terms of snaps and his normal workload because his conditioning's fine. He's been able to run and stay, doing things with his legs. So I think if Goddard plays, I'm back to putting him in my lineup. And I think he's going to play. It's Juwan Johnson. Super deep tight end is Juwan Johnson. If I go to, let's go by percent. Yeah, this is filtered by percent rostered. Super deep tight ends. Maybe Cade Otton because he's been kind of hot lately. Honestly, Chico Okonkwo has not been terrible. He did go 4 for 45 on 5 targets last weekend. It's a good matchup against the Colts. The Colts can't really cover tight end. So if you need somebody, they've given up 10, 9, 17, 23, 10, 21, 13, 12, 10, 12. They give up a ton of points to the tight end position. They did allow 7 for 61 back in week 5 too. Okonkwo in that game, 5 for 33 in that game. So I'm open to Okonkwo. Even deeper, you can maybe try Tyler Conklin, who went 4 for 33 on 5 targets with Tim Boyle. I think he's a 7 to 10 point floor type of guy. But the guy that interests me quite a bit, and it's because probably no Olave, probably no Rashid Shaheed, no Michael Thomas. It's Juwan Johnson in a matchup here against the Lions. Juwan had 7 targets last game, 4 for 45. It's a decent matchup here. I think Juwan Johnson's probably the lowest I'd want to go. If you had to go lower, it's maybe Tucker Kraft, but I don't feel great about it. The other guy that somewhat interests me a little bit is Tanner Hudson, 4 for 18, 5 targets last week with Jake Browning here. 5, 8, 9, and 8 in his last 4 games. That's the deepest I would go at the tight end position. Dobbs is so hard, man, because it's a touchdown or nothing. I don't love Dobbs. I think he's interesting. I think he continues to play well, but Jaden Reed's playing too well right now. Christian Watson's playing well. I do think Dontavian Wicks comes back, so I don't have a ton of confidence in Romeo Dobbs right now. And the Chiefs are very good against opponent wide receivers. They did allow the Raiders to kind of pop off here, and Tyreek Hill. So really good receivers can play well against these guys, but I don't know if we consider Romeo Dobbs a really good receiver. So I think I'm out on Dobbs this week. And yeah, man, I think we're back to Roschon Johnson, guys. I think he looked like the back that was going to get the most touches last night. If I go back to that game, Roschon Johnson led the team in snaps with 50, 21 routes, 4 targets, 11 carries. This is pretty clear right now that Roschon is ahead of Khalil Herbert in all facets of the game. Don't know what's going to happen when Deonta Foreman comes back, so that could muddle things up. But I think if it's me, I'm thinking they're going to give Roschon Johnson the chance to be the starting running back next year. I believe Deonta Foreman's just on a 1-year contract, so I don't know if he's back with the team. And I believe this is Khalil Herbert's last year of his deal. He might not be back with the team. So it does look like Roschon Johnson is the guy. And hey, if you can, I'd probably be willing to send a late second, early third round pick for Roschon Johnson if I can in dynasty formats. Pat or Taysom Hill could also start Pat this flex Hill over Dotson or Dobbs. Man, that's tough. I hate starting two tight ends. It feels like we're chasing Pat Freiermuth points here, but I think you got to play him against the Cardinals. So it's between Taysom Hill, Dotson, and Dobbs. I think I kind of want to roll with Jahan Dotson, man. And I don't get me wrong, I know Dotson's been pretty frustrating, but the last month or so, besides the goose egg here against Seattle, he's been pretty good. 10, 11, 16, and 24. This is the game where I expect the Dolphins to be up and Sam Howell will have to be throwing the ball. I'm leaning towards Dotson being my flex over Taysom Hill. I'm going to go Pat and Dotson. If that's what you got to, like, Jake Ferguson's been kind of down the last two games. I would rather own Pat over Ferguson rest of season. Do I like Kenneth Gainwell this week? Not particularly, no. It sounds like Harris is looking for some really low-end running backs here because of bye weeks. Let me look up Kenny Gainwell here. All right, so we know he can get touches, 2 for 26, 2 for 10. You know, I don't really want to trust this. Even when he scores a touchdown, he can't hit 10 points. So I don't think this is a great matchup. I don't think it's one I want to dabble with. They're listing Rico Dowdle here as questionable, Harris. But this is a game where the Cowboys are heavy favorites. You could see Rico Dowdle get fourth quarter time. I might even recommend, getting in Rico Dowdle here. I believe this is the non-PPR league for you, so you're kind of gambling for a touchdown here, right? Michael Carter is an interesting guy here. He did get 19 yards on the ground and 15 yards through the air. He could be used more this weekend. I do think Dearness Johnson's one of my favorite pickups. If you haven't looked at Dearness Johnson the last few games, the numbers are there. The rushing numbers are okay, 12, 20, and 19, but his receiving numbers, 28, 34, and 42, he's popping off some really big plays, and he's been playing well the last 3 games here. So I think, if I'm trying to shoot for 40 to 50 yards as a floor with a chance at a touchdown, it might be Dearness Johnson here, Harris. Otherwise, if you can start Samaje Perine, I think I do it. I don't know who else is available here for you, Harris, but I'm probably not in love with Kenny Gainwell. I could drop Higgins 2 in a 10-man where I'm stacked at receivers. I think I'm okay with moving on from Higgins if it makes my team better. It's Curtis Samuel. It's Elijah Moore's been okay. I know Amari Cooper's had a rib injury, but man, Sam Howell leads the league in passing yards. I want to be attached to that. The Browns don't know who their quarterback is right now. I think you got to go with Curtis Samuel after what he showed us on Thanksgiving. I can't argue with it. If Olave and Rashid Shaheed are out, Taysom Hill's probably going to be involved in the game plan. So I'm cool with it there, Chase. Gainwell's a PPR league. He just if it's a PPR league, Harris, then I'm probably just going to whip out Michael Carter, who had 4 catches last week. If I'm looking around for maybe 1 or 2 more guys deep down here, again, Gainwell's fine. Only 1 to 2 catches per game. He did have the spike of 5 points. If you're looking for 5 to 7 points, Gainwell can get you that. My thing with, Rico Dowdle's been playing well, so I don't mind him. But otherwise, Dearness Johnson down here and what's his name? Dearness Johnson and Michael Carter, I think, interest me more from a PPR perspective. It probably doesn't matter, Chase. You could probably let him go. Heineke's never going to be a starting quarterback for a team unless something bad happens. So, and it's the Falcons' offense, so I think we can let him go. And yeah, I didn't see anything either, but the projections are basically giving Zappy the start, which is kind of surprising to me. But at this point, I don't want to mess with the Patriots quarterbacks. Trade Kenny Pickett, Kenny Gainwell, and Elijah Moore for Sam Howell, Zach Moss, and Cortland Sutton. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I want Howell, Moss, and Sutton. Easy all day. drop Higgins for Downs, London, or DeMario. The one that makes sense is probably Drake London. I'm gonna say Josh Downs though. With no Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss back, I think Downs is going to be a popular play. I don't hate Demario Douglas. I just hate his quarterbacks. It doesn't really matter who it is, Mac Jones or Zappy, though. He's probably going to be about 10 points per game. I feel most comfortable playing Downs every week because of his high floor. I'm going to rank him as Downs, London, DeMario, or Reed. Yeah, go get Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's the easy answer here, Chase. Jaden Reed's the guy you want from that group. Jaden Reed's been playing very good football the last month. And you can see here, honestly, all season, he's only got 4 games under double-digit fantasy points here. Jaden Reed's hot. Getting carries, rushing touchdowns, manufactured touches, man. Touchdowns galore. I want Jaden Reed on that team, dude. I'm just going to open up my waiver wire column and just make sure I covered everything for you guys here. My favorite ads for the week were Jordan Love, Russell Wilson, Gardner Minshew. Zach Moss moved to the top of my list. If you can get Zach Moss, please go aggressively target Zach Moss. Keaton Mitchell needs to be picked up. A.J. Dillon, Chuba Hubbard, P. Ryan, and handcuffs. Now, these are more, 10-team ads. If you can get any of these receivers, this is a list we've kind of been talking about. I want these guys on the end of my PPR benches at tight ends if you guys need some help here. But otherwise, I think for the most part, the list of deeper league ads, I think, is what we're looking at here, guys. So I do like Juwan Johnson, Greg Dulcich, maybe Tucker Kraft. At wide receiver, I want to talk about A.T. Perry for a second here because, again, no Olave, no Rashid Shaheed probably this weekend. I think A.T. Perry might be the last man standing for the New Orleans Saints. He's an interesting spot start if you need a receiver. Jalen Hyatt did play pretty well with Tommy DeVito the other day. Hyatt's an interesting play. Justin Watson should be picked up. Maybe Cedric Tillman, if no Amari Cooper. And then Atwell, Mooney, Dortch, Gallup. These guys are just kind of end of the bench guys that have big names still. Do you like Miles Sanders over Kenneth Gainwell, PPR? So it's a terrible matchup for Miles Sanders going up against that Buccaneers defense. But the dude had 15 or 14 carries last week. If I always like to say, if there's a running back out there that's getting 10 to 12 plus touches per game, he's startable in fantasy football. So it's probably Miles Sanders in this game over Gainwell. I don't see the upside with Gainwell. It's a tough matchup, especially against the 49ers in a tough game. I don't see any garbage time opportunities for Gainwell. Now that I say all this, he's probably going to score some kind of fluke touchdown. Do you like Justin Watson? I think I do like Justin Watson. Let's pull up those numbers. And the thing going for Watson was that the Chiefs were missing Hardman and Tony in week 12. And that opened things up for all the Chiefs receivers. Here are your snaps from that game. Rashee Rice running the most routes. Justin Watson, the number 2 man. He's the clear number 2 wide receiver for this team. Marquez Valdes-Scantling's been kind of downgraded to the 3rd or 4th guy. Watson should be picked up. He can be a desperation wide receiver 3 flex if you need him. It's a decent matchup against the Packers this weekend. I know the Packers statistically are good against wide receiver, but if you can name me one of their cornerbacks, please do. It's Samaje Perine this weekend in a game against the Texans. I think that could have some fantasy points in it. And Perine has been his workload has been going up over the last 2 weeks. So to me, Harris, it's Perine. It's pretty easy for me to just lock Perine in there. Anybody else on these lists that I can maybe find here for us? I still want to hold on to Antonio Gibson. I think he continues to look good as a receiving back. Harris, if this is PPR, Gibson can be one of your players for you. Any game where the Commanders are like heavy favorites to lose, that means they're going to have to throw the ball. Gibson in comeback mode. I think Gibson is an interesting PPR play this weekend against the Dolphins. Again, Keaton Mitchell is one of my top ads. And then I did have Samaje Perine down here. I think Michael Carter is a guy that could get more work down the stretch here. The Cardinals didn't have to pick him up, but they put a waiver claim in for him. They're letting Keontae Ingram go. Amari DiMercado is now a non-factor as the RB2. Michael Carter might be a running back bench guy worth monitoring the rest of the season. And then, yeah, I'm probably going to move Roshan up. He's not a stash handcuff anymore. I think Roshan's the starting running back right now. Royce Freeman continues to operate as the backup here, and he looks good. If anything happens to Kieran Williams, I think it's Royce Freeman's backfield. Elijah Mitchell needs to be stashed. Kenneth Gainwell still needs to be stashed. We're not starting him unless there's a swift injury, but still stash him. Rico Dowdle needs to be stashed. And then down here, Zamir White, Dearness Johnson need to be stashed. I want to see Kendre Miller again at some point this year. I thought he looked good in the little bit of time that we saw him. And yeah, we kind of talked about these receivers a lot. I still want to hope for Rashid Shaheed, but I don't think it's going to happen. The thigh injury could keep him out 1 to 2 games and just kind of get him out of the conditioning and the loop here with that offense. Otherwise, some deep stash wide receivers here for you guys. Mingo, Shakir, Wilson, Justin Watson, Jalen Hyatt, A.T. Perry, Cedric Tillman. Most of these guys are rookie wide receivers. There's only 2 veterans, and one of them is Justin Watson. The other one's Khalil Shakir, a second-year receiver. So I think you want to pick up running. This is the time of year where you want to pick up rookie wide receivers as well as handcuff running backs. You basically just want to rotate your bench the final 1 or 2 spots and make some room for some of these upside guys here. Mingo had a nice double-digit PPR day last week. It's a fantastic matchup against Tampa Bay this weekend. It wouldn't surprise me if Mingo has a game this weekend. And then, yeah, we talked about Perry, Hyatt. And then, yeah, if no Amari Cooper, I think Tillman can be a guy for you. And then deep down here at the tight end spots, Harris asked the question earlier, which tight ends do I like for really, really deep? Tucker Kraft, Juwan Johnson, maybe Tyler Conklin, maybe Okonkwo, guys like that. Would you sign Tutu Atwell? I think at this point, I'm cool with Atwell being on my bench. We know Cooper Kupp has not been healthy for various parts of the season. We also know Puka Nacua has been on the injury report like every single week this year. If one of those, and I think we know that if one of the starting receivers are out for the Rams, it's a 2 wide receiver offense where there's room for 2 fantasy starters. So I think Atwell is one of those guys that I like putting on my bench just in case. And hey, now that the Rams are 5-6, they have a little bit of playoff glimmer in their eye. I'm okay with picking up Rams players. Downs, Reader, Dotson, full PPR pick 1. If it's for this week there, Chase, I'm going to go with Jaden Reed. I'm going to go with the guy that's been playing the best. I would rank them as Reed, Downs, Dotson. I don't know if I'm ready to sit Cooper Kupp. I know it's the toughest matchup on paper against the bright red number 1 Cleveland Browns receiver defense here, but I'm going to give Cooper Kupp the benefit of the doubt. He's been a fantasy champion for us. I think I'm going to leave Cooper Kupp in there. Perry or Tutu Atwell half PPR. It's hard to answer without knowing if Olave is going to play. Again, concussions, I usually think that a player is going to miss at least 1 game with a concussion, so assuming no Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, I think Perry's probably the guy I'm going to play in this matchup here. You know, he could get 4, 5, 6 targets. Atwell, basically you're hoping for a big player too, but hey, that could only be 1 for 10 on Atwell. It could be, 3 for 60 and a touchdown. If you need the risk, I would go Atwell, but I think as long as, like we said, if no Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, I'm going to go with A.T. Perry. But keep the questions coming in, guys. The defenses that I like this weekend, again, I've kind of mentioned them. Jacksonville, Atlanta, Tampa Bay. The team that I like the most is Atlanta. We're talking Tim Boyle here, guys. Shit's going to happen. There's going to be some turnovers. There's going to be some bad plays from the Jets offense, and it's arguably the worst game this week. You can see these are the bottom teams. And again, this is the tab on my DraftKings Game Lines tab. You guys can go here. I update this every day based on what the DraftKings Sportsbook is telling me. And right now, the Bengals, the Jets, and the Panthers are all projected to score about 15 points. So Jacksonville, Atlanta, Tampa Bay are your top streaming defenses for the week. But hey, if you guys got any more questions, please fire them away. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of here for the evening. I will be going live. Now that, again, Thanksgiving week's over. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. We're back into our normal swing of things. And I think I'm with you guys. I don't have to be anywhere until Christmas. So December, I am back to my routine schedule. Did this question just come through here? Would you pick up P Ryan and half PPR? I think so, man. So Harris, there's a I watch Football Guys. If you guys know Football Guys, there it's just another fantasy website here, and they have a good YouTube channel. But one of their insiders, he works for Denver, and he was kind of pumping up Samaje Perine today. Samaje Perine apparently voiced his frustrations about him not being used. That's why he came here. They gave him a good amount of money, and he wasn't being used. Well, the last 2 games, they're starting to use him more. And I think if you're we probably should have cut. If you still have Jaleel McLaughlin on your team, he probably should have been cut a week or 2 ago. I think this is moving again towards Javonte Perine 2-back system here. I think Perine is a fantastic handcuff down the stretch here. And honestly, Javonte Williams hasn't looked great. I thought watching that game, the parts that I did watch on Red Zone, I thought Perine looked better than Javonte in that game here. So I do like picking him up there, Harris. But anyways, guys, tomorrow night we'll be going live 7 p.m. Central Time Wednesday evening. Come hang out with us. I'll have practice reports to go over. We'll look at some of my start sit charts and any other new information, news that we can go over, and your questions. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. We'll see you Wednesday evening, and good luck on your waivers. Peace.